This is my true story. My son believed his anger made him the boss of the apartment I paid for with my savings. One afternoon in front of his wife, he lifted his hand and hit me. Not once, not twice, but 20 times. Each hit came with her giggle, her mean smile, like I was just a toy to laugh at. I stayed quiet. I counted each one. My face hurt, but my mind grew strong and clear. He believed he had made me feel small. He didn't know I still owned everything. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me which country you are watching from and click subscribe so more people can hear what I went through. I remember when it all began like it was just yesterday. He was a small boy with dirty hands running after a butterfly in the garden, looking at me like I could fix anything in the world. And maybe I could. I showed him how to plant seeds, how to water flowers so they grew tall, how to tie his shoes so they wouldn't come loose. We worked together when he was tiny, little fingers trying to copy what I did. Happy when he made something grow without killing it. Those were the days I believed would turn him into a man who valued hard work, who valued what mothers do. When he got older, I signed the papers for the apartment he would stay in. The bank needed someone they could trust, someone who had money saved. That was me. I worked extra hours and skipped buying new clothes for myself so the family could have better things than I ever had. I signed the loan papers with a steady hand, never thinking those same hands would be hurt by him one day. Back then, all I felt was happiness. Happy that he had a place to sleep. Happy that my son could live without worry while I carried the heavy load. I gave him the apartment not just as a roof but as a gift, a place to cook meals and tell stories, a place to show everyone that our family was strong. That apartment was not just walls and paint. It was my sweat and my tears pushed into every corner. It was the hours I spent working when I was tired. It was my gift, the kind a mother gives without asking for anything back. For many years I walked past it feeling proud inside. When I saw the lights on at night I thought, my son is safe and warm. When I saw him sweeping the steps I thought, my son is taking care of things. When I saw his wife cooking by the window I thought, my son has found his path. And I believed, maybe foolishly, that somewhere inside his heart he was thankful, even if he never said the words out loud. But the truth became harder to carry as time went on. The apartment that was supposed to be my gift became my pain. He forgot where it came from. He forgot whose name opened the door. He forgot the hours I worked to make those walls stand. He started to talk like it was all because of him, like my hands never touched anything. The thankfulness I once imagined turned into meanness, and meanness turned into hate. Still I stayed quiet. A mother hopes. A mother makes excuses. A mother believes the good will come back, even when the truth hurts. I told myself he was just young, just learning, just finding his way in life. I told myself respect would return with patience and time. I told myself waiting was the answer. But waiting became the rope that choked me slowly. I gave him everything I had. And one afternoon in front of his wife, he paid me back with 20 hits across my face. As my cheeks burned red, I remembered the seed in his small hand. The boy who once looked up at me, the apartment I gave him, the papers I signed, the food I didn't eat, the hours I worked so hard, and the sadness that started with giving ended that afternoon in shame. The gift I gave had grown into grief, and grief had turned into anger colder than ice. It did not begin with hitting. It never starts that way with mean people. It started with words, sharp and hurtful, like tiny stones thrown at my face. His wife laughed at every cruel thing he said. She poured his tea and leaned close, and he got braver with each sip he took. Old woman, he called me. Useless. I sat still, the food in front of me not eaten, my hands resting flat on the table. I told myself to stay calm. I told myself to just breathe, but then came the push. His hand shoved my shoulder back, not hard enough to knock me over, but hard enough for them both to laugh. And when laughter comes, cruelty finds its strength. He hit me once. The sound was loud, fast, and I felt the sting on my cheek burn hot. Before I could think, he hit me again. The second one hurt more, not because it was harder but because of the shame I felt inside. His wife put her hand over her mouth and laughed behind it, pretending to be shocked, but she loved every second of it. He looked around the room, proud, like hitting me made him bigger and stronger. The counting grew. 3, 4, 5. Each hit came with a bad word, a mean name. 6, 7, 8. My face felt hot, my eyes filled with water, but I did not let myself cry. 9, 10, 11. The room became blurry, not from the force, but from the heavy shame pressing down on me. 12, 13, 14. His hand got tired before his pride did. 15, 16, 17. My ears made a ringing sound, my skin swelled up, but still I sat. 18, 19, 20. When the last one fell, the room was silent for just a moment, and then his wife clapped her hands together like it was a fun show. My chest went up and down, slow and heavy. I could taste something bad in my mouth, but I swallowed it down. I would not let them see me spit or cry. My hands stayed folded in my lap. My back stayed straight and tall. I would not raise my voice. I would not hit back. I sat still and silent while they laughed at me. They thought my silence meant I was weak. They thought my stillness meant I lost. But what they did not see was the fire in my chest turning to ice. That hour, that terrible hour, was the longest of my whole life. Every hit was not just skin touching skin. It was a memory being erased. It was respect being destroyed. It was 30 years of giving thrown on the floor like trash. He did not just hit me 20 times. He hit every seed I planted, every dollar I saved, every hour I worked without rest. And when it was over, I stood up from the table, nodded once, and walked out the door. No yelling, no begging, just silence. But in that silence, a plan began to form in my mind. The hits ended that afternoon, but the shame did not go away. Bruises fade away, swelling goes down, but feeling small does not heal with time. Follows you everywhere, sticks to you like mud. It waits in every corner when you walk outside. The next morning when I stepped out my door, I saw neighbors standing on their porches. They looked at me, then looked away too fast. Some shook their heads, some whispered to each other. The sound of what happened had traveled faster than the morning birds. I pulled my old sweater tighter around me, not because I was cold, but because I felt naked and exposed. His wife made sure everyone knew. She had pulled out her phone that afternoon, smiling at the camera like it was a party. A video here, a picture there, words written with a nasty smile. Respect your elders. Not in this house, she laughed when she posted it online. Her friends laughed in the comments below it. By morning, more people had seen it than I ever wanted to know about. What happened inside those walls had spilled out into the street, and the street carried it further than any hand could reach. The apartment I paid for, the one I signed for, the one I gave him, became a stage for my shame. Once that home was my pride, now it felt like my prison. Every door that stood strong now mocked me. Every wall that once kept me safe now felt like it trapped me in shame. I could feel the weight of the ceiling pressing down on my shoulders, heavier than any bag I ever carried. Neighbors who used to wave at me stopped coming over. Friends who once visited found reasons to stay away. Even family members talk to me differently now. Their voices carried pity, not respect. Their eyes held shame, not warmth. It was not just the hits. It was everyone knowing about it. It was the fact that what should have stayed private, what should never have happened at all, was now something everyone talked about. And I wore it on my face each time I walked outside. I heard children whispering as I passed them. I heard adults lower their voices when I got near. The sting of his hand had faded from my cheek, but the sting of their whispers lived fresh in my ears every single day. I felt like a woman stripped of her place in the world. The mother who worked, the mother who gave, the mother who went without, gone, replaced by the old woman who had been hit 20 times by her own son. That was my name now. That was my title in their eyes. That was what they thought of me when they saw me. Inside the apartment, the silence was even worse. He walked through the rooms like nothing had happened at all. His wife smiled at him and walked past me like I was just a chair or a table. They laughed together in the kitchen, the sound traveling down the hall, filling the home with a happiness that cut me deeper than the hits ever did. They acted like my pain was a joke, a funny story to tell, a thing to be proud of showing others. I could hear them through the walls. their laughter louder than any storm outside. That apartment, the one I gave from my own pocket, had turned against me. No longer felt like home. It felt like proof of my own foolishness. Proof that I had given too much without thinking. Proof that I had trusted too blindly. Proof that I had mistaken being mean for being strong. And as the days passed, the shame grew bigger, not smaller. Each whisper, each laugh, each look added weight to my chest that made it hard to breathe. But shame has two sides to it. One is pain. The other is seeing things clearly. And as I carried the first, the second began to grow inside me. They had turned my gift into a stage for cruelty. They had turned my silence into a joke. They had turned my dignity into ashes and dust. But they had forgotten one thing: the papers, the deed, the title with my name on it. The apartment he thought was his kingdom was still mine on paper, signed and sealed. He had mocked me inside walls I still controlled by law. And as the world laughed at me, I began to plan my next move. That night, when the apartment grew quiet and dark, I did not sleep at all. I sat at my old wooden table with only a small lamp burning. The light was soft and yellow against the walls, but my heart was hard and cold as stone. I pulled the metal box from under my bed. It was the same metal box I had kept for many, many years, filled with the papers of my life. Old letters, old bills, but most important of all, the deeds and titles that proved what belonged to me. I placed them on the table one by one and spread them out like playing cards in a game I was about to win. My hands shook a little, but not from fear or worry. They shook from the weight of what I held in my fingers. There was sitting right in front of me the title of the apartment, his apartment, the one he bragged about to his friends, the one he hit me inside of, the one his wife laughed in while I bled inside. I stared at the paper for a very long time. His name was not written on it anywhere. Mine was. He thought it belonged to him, but the law said something completely different. The loan was mine. The responsibility was mine. The property was mine by right. The same hands he hit were the same hands that still owned every single brick of the apartment he walked through every day. I thought back to the day I signed those papers at the bank. I had stood tall then, proud to give him something I never had when I was young. I believed I was building his future with my sacrifice. I believed I was giving him a steady life. But looking at the title now, sitting alone at my table, I saw it differently. It was not a gift anymore in my eyes. It was a chain he had wrapped around my neck, pulling tighter with each hit, each insult, each mean smirk from his wife. But chains can be broken when you know where the lock is. And I realized that night I held the key in my hands. I sat for hours reading every single line of the papers. My eyes followed the words slowly, carefully, like a hawk watching a mouse. I wanted no mistake. I wanted no doubt in my mind. Every word, every signature, every stamp reminded me that the apartment was mine, not his, no matter what he believed. My heart became steady with each word I read. The law was on my side. The world had mocked me, but the law would not mock me. The law would listen to my signature the way it listened to my son's laughter, and that gave me strength I had not felt in years. I closed the metal box, placed the title on top of it, and rested my hand flat on the paper. My fingers pressed into it until I could feel my own heartbeat pulsing in them. For the first time since the hits happened, I did not feel powerless or small. I felt control coming back to me, slow and quiet like water filling an empty cup. They thought they had broken me into pieces. They thought they had stripped me of my dignity and pride. They thought they had turned me into nothing but a joke for the internet. But in that moment, looking down at the title, I knew something they did not know at all. The joke was on them, not me. The papers were not just words on a page you could ignore. They were weapons sharper than fists. They were hammers heavier than hands. My son had forgotten who signed his life into existence on paper. He had forgotten who placed the roof over his head with her own money. He had forgotten that the same old woman he hit 20 times was the same old woman the law still recognized as the true owner of his entire world. And that night I remembered everything clearly. I folded the title carefully, slid it back into the metal box, and closed the lid with a soft click. My decision was not loud or dramatic. It was not fiery or rushed. It was cold, like ice forming on a pond in winter. Tomorrow I would act. Tomorrow I would remind him of the truth he forgot. The apartment he thought was his property was still mine, and I would take it back from him. When the metal box was back under my bed and the lamp turned low, I sat in the dark and thought of all the choices I had in front of me. I could have screamed that afternoon when his hand hit me. I could have called the police to arrest him. I could have run to neighbors, shown them the marks, begged for their help and pity. But noise does not build respect back. Screaming does not repair dignity once it's broken. The louder a woman fights, the smaller she looks when no one listens to her cries. I had been made small once at that table in front of his wife, in front of their laughter and cruelty. I would not be made small again, not ever. So I chose silence instead. Silence is colder than anger. Silence lasts longer than screams. Silence does not fade away like a bruise on the skin. My son thought his fists made him powerful and strong. His wife thought her mean smile made her clever and smart, but neither of them knew the weight of paper signed by law. Neither of them knew how cold and sharp a signature could be when used correctly. They had mocked me on floors I paid for, under a roof I worked for, inside walls that still bore my name on every legal document. If my shame happened there, then my revenge would happen there too, in the exact same place. I thought of the apartment itself and every corner of it. Every nail I paid for, every wall I painted, every light bulb I replaced. It was all work meant for his comfort and safety. And he turned that gift into a stage for violence against his own mother. The thought burned me at first like fire. Then it froze solid like ice. My decision came like winter, slow, steady, without any mercy at all. Winter does not shout when it takes over the land. It creeps in silently, covers everything, and leaves nothing untouched by its cold. That was how I would answer him back. I could see it already in my mind. The look on his face when he came home from work and found his life completely gone. The anger in his voice when the locks no longer opened for his key. The confusion in his wife's eyes when furniture was being carried out by strangers. When people she didn't know walked through her kitchen touching her things, when the world they built on my back crumbled into dust and nothing. They would know then what they refused to know before this moment. The hand that gives can also take away just as easily. My decision was not revenge for the pain in my cheek that would heal in time. My decision was for the dignity they had tried to steal from my soul. A mother can forgive a mistake made in anger. A mother can forgive pride that comes from youth. But a mother cannot forgive 20 hits and the laughter of a wife who clapped while it happened like a circus show. That was not just cruelty. That was contempt, pure and deep. And contempt deserves consequence, not forgiveness. So I decided I would sell the apartment to someone else. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right now, immediately. I would not warn him about it. I would not speak of my plan. I would not give him the chance to beg, to promise lies, to pretend he was sorry. He would go to work believing his world was safe and secure, believing his kingdom stood strong and unshakable. And while he worked and laughed with his friends, that world would collapse quietly, piece by piece, under the stroke of my pen signing papers. I leaned back in my chair and breathed deep into my lungs. The night outside was cold and dark, but I felt colder inside. My heart was no longer heavy with shame and sadness. It was steady with purpose and direction. That is when I knew my choice was final and could not be changed. Like winter covering the earth, it would not be stopped by anything. Tomorrow, I would walk into my lawyer's office, place the title on his desk, and start the quiet storm that would strip my son of the apartment he thought belonged to him forever. The hits were his gift to me that afternoon. The silence afterward was mine to him in return, but the apartment was mine to take back whenever I chose. The next morning I woke up before the sun came up. The apartment was completely still. The air was sharp and cold against my skin. I put on the same sweater he once made fun of, brushed the dust from my old shoes, and tucked the metal box under my arm tightly. My steps were slow but steady as I walked down the street toward the lawyer's office. Each sound of my shoes on the pavement felt like a drum beat in my chest. I was not walking to work. I was not walking to beg for anything. I was walking to take back what was mine by right. At the lawyer's office, the heat from the heater filled the room, but I still felt the cold of my determination inside. The lawyer was a woman I had known for many years who helped me before. She looked at me, then at the box, and said softly with concern, "What brings you in today?" I did not tell her the whole story of hits or shame or cruelty. That was not needed for the law. I told her only the facts that mattered for the papers. "I want to sell an apartment," I said clearly. "This one right here." And I laid the title on her desk in front of her. Her eyes studied the paper carefully for a moment. Then she nodded with understanding. "It is in your name. We can move forward immediately." The sound of her pen scratching across the first form was louder to me than any hit my son ever gave me. With each page she filled out, the plan unfolded step by step, the listing, the contracts, the transfer, the new buyers who would own it. There was nothing loud or violent in that room. Just the slow, steady sound of the law working in my favor. Where my son had used fists to hurt me, I used ink to hurt him back. Where he used laughter to mock me, I used silence to destroy him. We arranged everything clean and precise with no room for error. No loopholes, no cracks for him to crawl back through and escape. The sale would be immediate and fast. The ownership would move into new hands without any delay or waiting period. I asked for the money not to return to me alone, but to be divided into a fund for those who had shown me respect over the years, workers, helpers, people who had treated me kindly when my own son would not lift a finger. The lawyer wrote it all down carefully, making sure every single word was protected by law and could not be challenged. I signed each paper slowly and deliberately. My hand did not shake even once. Each stroke of my pen felt like a hammer blow, not against Wood this time, but against the arrogance and pride of my son. I remembered teaching my son how to be kind, how to work hard, how to respect the people who help you in life. Now I was showing him the weight of something much heavier than kindness, a mother's quiet justice delivered through law. By the time all the papers were signed and stacked, I felt lighter than air. The lawyer shook my hand firmly and said with a smile, "It is final now. Once the new buyers move in next week, there is absolutely nothing he can do to stop it." I thanked her from my heart and walked out of that office with my sweater pulled tight around me. Outside, the air felt sharper and cleaner than before. I had not raised my voice even once. I had not hit back with my hands, but I had struck something far deeper than skin. I thought of my son at his job right now, laughing with his coworkers, bragging about his life and his home, completely sure that his apartment would always be waiting for him. He did not know that at that very hour strangers were walking through the rooms he thought he owned, looking at the walls, opening the closets, planning where their children might sleep at night. He did not know that the very apartment he raised his hand in was already slipping from his fingers like sand. The legal thread was woven tight and strong, and he had no scissors sharp enough to cut through it. His fists could not undo signatures written in ink. His pride could not erase official stamps. His laughter could not rewrite the law that protected me. The apartment was mine to give, and I had given it away to someone who deserved it more. When I returned to the apartment that evening, I sat again at the same wooden table where I had planned everything. The metal box was empty now. The title was gone, passed into the hands of the law and the new owners. My face still carried the faint marks of his hits, but my chest carried something much stronger inside it, the knowledge that I had answered shame not with rage but with something permanent and unbreakable. He had left marks on my skin that would fade. I had taken the ground from under his feet that would never come back. The day of reckoning came quietly without any warning. He woke up in the morning, stretched his arms above his head, kissed his wife on the cheek, and laughed as he left for his job. His steps were proud and careless, the same swagger of a man who believed his world could never be shaken or touched. He did not look at me when he passed. He did not remember the bruises on my face. He did not even think about the title I still held in my name. To him, the apartment was his kingdom that could never fall. To me it was already gone, sold and transferred. Not long after he left for work, cars began to pull into the parking area outside. First, the realtor with folders and papers in her hands, then the movers carrying empty boxes, wrapping furniture carefully, rolling up the rugs from the floor. They walked through the doors he once called his own without any hesitation or doubt. Strangers stepped into the living room where he sat every night. Strangers opened the closets where his clothes hung. Strangers ran their hands along the counters in the kitchen. His wife came out from the bedroom, her eyes wide with shock, her voice sharp and panicked. "What is happening here?" she demanded loudly. The realtor handed her the official papers calmly. She read the words, but they meant nothing to her confused mind. "This apartment has been sold legally," the woman said in a calm voice. "Please gather your things and prepare to leave." Her face lost all its color instantly. She shouted at the top of her lungs. She called my son on the phone frantically. She waved the paper in the air like it was on fire, but the workers kept moving without stopping. Box after box left the apartment in a steady stream. Table legs were unscrewed carefully, chairs stacked on top of each other, pictures taken down from the walls and wrapped. The apartment filled with the sound of packing tape being pulled, the scraping of furniture across the floor, the thud of footsteps going in and out. Her voice cracked and broke as she called him again and again, but he was at work, too far away to stop what had already begun hours ago. I stood in the corner of the room, silent and still, just watching everything unfold. I did not smile with happiness. I did not speak a single word. I only watched the life they built on my back being carried out piece by piece through the door. Each box that left was not just furniture or clothes. It was a lesson being taught. Each rug rolled up was not just fabric and thread. It was the end of their arrogance and cruelty. The very walls seemed to sigh with relief as they emptied out. By the time the sun was high in the sky, the apartment no longer looked like theirs at all. The family photos were gone from the shelves themselves bare and empty, the closets stripped of everything. Strangers measured the windows for new curtains they would hang. They planned where their beds would go in each room, talked about what colors they would paint the walls. The sound of their voices filled the air while his wife sat on the stairs shaking and crying. Her phone pressed against her ear, whispering frantic, broken words to a man who could not save her from this. I thought of the afternoon he hit me 20 times in front of her. I thought of her laughter, her cruel smirk, her clapping hands, and I thought of how sure they both had been that I was powerless and weak. But here I was, standing steady and tall while their entire world was being taken apart before their very eyes. They had believed cruelty would go unpunished by anyone. They had believed arrogance would protect them from consequences, but they forgot completely who held the deed in her name. When the very last box was carried out by the movers, I stepped outside into the fresh air. The movers loaded the truck with everything. The realtor locked the final paperwork in her car with a click. His wife sat by the door, her face buried deep in her hands, sobbing without control. I walked past her without saying a single word. There was nothing left to say to her. The apartment was gone, sold while he worked and laughed, taken from them as quietly as they had taken my dignity and respect. And as I walked away down the street, I felt no heat, no fire, no need to celebrate, only peace deep in my soul, because justice had been done in complete silence. Evening came slowly, and with it came my son home from work. I heard the familiar sound of his car pulling into the parking area, the slam of his door, the heavy steps up the walkway toward the entrance. He was laughing on the phone with someone, his voice proud and careless, the way men sound when they think nothing in the world can ever touch them or hurt them. The key turned in the lock, but the door did not swing open the way he expected it to. He pushed harder with his shoulder, frowning deeply, confused and annoyed. Finally, his wife opened it from the inside. Her face was pale as a ghost, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She said nothing at all. She only handed him the stack of papers the realtor had left. He stepped inside the apartment and froze completely in place. The apartment was empty, totally bare. The living room where he once sat with his friends was nothing but empty floors. No couch, no chairs, no pictures hanging on the walls, just empty floors and hollow echoes of nothing. His laughter died instantly in his throat. He looked around wildly, his mouth hanging half open, his phone still clutched in his hand. He shouted her name, shouted my name, shouted at the empty air around him. His voice filled the empty space with anger, but there was nothing and no one to answer him back. He ran from room to room like a madman. The dining table was completely gone. The cabinets in the kitchen were bare and empty. The closet doors stood open wide, shelves stripped of every single thing. Even the rug in the hallway was rolled up and carried away by strangers. Every step he took brought him more panic and more fear. His fists slammed hard against the walls. His voice cracked and broke into curses and screams. His wife followed behind him slowly, crying now without stopping, her words broken into pieces. I told you something was wrong. I tried to call you. But he would not hear her words. He could not hear anything. The truth was louder than any excuse she could give. He found me sitting calmly in the kitchen, in the one chair left behind by the movers, my sweater folded neatly over my lap. I did not stand up. I did not speak a word. I only looked at him with steady eyes. He glared at me with rage, his chest rising fast, his fists clenched tight and shaking. What did you do? He roared at me like a wild animal. I said nothing in response. I only pointed slowly to the counter where the realtor had left the final copy of all the papers. He grabbed them roughly, his hands trembling badly, his eyes scanning the words he could not change or fight. The rage left his face then, not all at once, but slowly draining away, replaced by something he had never shown me before in his entire life. Fear. Real deep fear. He dropped the papers on the floor, stepped back, ran his fingers through his hair roughly. No, he whispered in disbelief. No, this can't be real. This can't be happening. His wife leaned against the wall for support, her face covered with tears, her voice low and broken. It's gone. The apartment is gone. It's really gone. He turned back to me, his eyes wide and almost begging now. Mom, you can't. You wouldn't do this to me. But I already had done it. His voice cracked into pieces. His hands shook uncontrollably. But the silence between us was stronger than any of his pleading words. The silence told him the complete truth. The silence told him this was final and could never be undone. He tried to argue loudly, tried to shout about rights he thought he had, about family, about blood relation. But every word he screamed bounced off the empty walls and fell flat on the floor. The law had already spoken its final word. His fists could not fight against ink on paper. His pride could not undo legal signatures. His cruelty could not change the fact that the apartment was no longer his property. When the movers returned later to finish their final work, he tried to block the door with his body, but they calmly showed him the stamped official papers. Legal documents are heavier and stronger than fists will ever be. He stumbled back helplessly, completely defeated, as strangers carried out the very last pieces of his life in boxes. His wife sank into a corner of the empty room, silent now, completely broken inside, and he stood there alone, a man stripped of absolutely everything, watching his kingdom walk out the door in the hands of people he didn't even know. I rose at last from my chair, put on my sweater slowly, and walked past him toward the door. Our shoulders brushed lightly, but neither of us spoke a single word to each other. I left him standing there, alone in his own ruin, surrounded by nothing but echoes bouncing off empty walls. The apartment he thought would always be his had slipped away in a single day. Sold while he worked and bragged, taken while he laughed with friends, gone before he even understood the power he had mocked and destroyed. The apartment was gone forever, but the destruction did not stop at the walls and doors. It spread outward like ripples on a pond after a heavy stone has been thrown into the water. Word traveled fast through the neighborhood, faster than I ever imagined it would. Neighbors who once watched quietly from their windows now whispered in small groups by their fences and mailboxes. They had seen him hit me that afternoon. They had heard the laughter of his wife echoing through the walls. And now they saw the moving trucks, the workers, the strangers carrying furniture out through the door into the sunlight. Some neighbors shook their heads with disappointment. Some smirked with satisfaction. Some said quietly under their breath, "He got exactly what he deserved." Friends who once filled his rooms with loud noise and drinking no longer called his phone. They did not answer his desperate messages. They did not return his visits to their homes. They had celebrated in his apartment, eaten food at his table, clapped and cheered when his wife mocked me in front of everyone. Now when he needed them the most, they vanished like smoke in the wind. Pride does not invite pity from others. Arrogance does not win you allies when you fall. He stood completely alone in his shame. His wife, who once smirked cruelly as he raised his hand against me, now carried shame heavier than gold or stone. At the store, she tried to pay for groceries but was turned away by people who knew what she had done. People whispered loudly as she left empty-handed and embarrassed. At gatherings with friends, she sat quiet in the corner, no longer the woman who laughed the loudest at cruel jokes. Her friends slowly distanced themselves from her, unwilling to stand beside someone who mocked an old woman and lost everything in return for it. Her apologies came in broken fragments, but they fell completely flat, spoken too late and too soft to mean anything real anymore. Even at his job where he worked every day, the news followed him like a shadow. Men he worked with looked at him with different eyes now. Some laughed behind his back when he walked past. Others avoided him completely, not wanting to be connected to his disgrace and shame. He had once bragged loudly about the apartment, the furniture he owned, the parties he threw for everyone. Now all of that was gone into thin air, and so was the respect he thought he had earned. His pride had been built on borrowed walls that were never his, and when those walls fell down, so did his image in everyone's eyes. The shame he gave me that afternoon spread back to him 10 times stronger. He could not step outside his temporary shelter without feeling eyes watching him from every direction. He could not walk down the street without whispers trailing behind him like ghosts. Every nod from strangers, every glance from neighbors reminded him of the night he hit me and the day his apartment vanished into someone else's hands. What he thought was strength and power had become weakness and embarrassment. What he thought was control had become shame that would not wash away. I watched everything from a safe distance. I did not gloat or brag. I did not celebrate with joy. I did not need to do any of that. The world was delivering the justice I had set in motion with my signature. My silence was louder than his fists ever were. My decision was heavier than his laughter and mockery. He learned his lesson not from my words or lectures, but from the complete emptiness around him that swallowed him whole. The same neighbors who once saw me as just the old woman in the worn sweater now looked at me with completely different eyes. Some gave me nods of deep respect when they saw me. Some offered quiet words of support. You did the right thing. You stood up for yourself. They knew the truth without me ever speaking it out loud to them. They had seen what he did to me with their own eyes. They had seen what I did in return through the law. And they knew the balance had been restored to how it should be. My son, once surrounded by friends and comfort and pride, now stood in complete ruin with nothing left. His wife, once proud and cruel with her mean smile, now tasted the bitterness of silence and loneliness every single day. The social shockwave was not loud or dramatic. It was slow, steady, and completely relentless, and it stripped them both of everything they once thought was untouchable and safe. I walked away from that life with nothing but my sweater and a small bag of my belongings. Yet my chest felt lighter than it had felt in many, many years. Behind me stood the apartment I paid for, now empty of his laughter, empty of his pride and arrogance, no longer chained to my name on any paper. Ahead of me stretched quiet streets lined with people who whispered, but this time the whispers were not about my shame. They were about my justice and my strength. They were about a mother who had been hit 20 times, mocked in front of strangers and filmed for the internet, and yet found a way to answer back without ever raising her hand in violence. The apartment did not disappear from the earth. Still stands tall on the street. Its bricks still hold strong. Its roof still keeps out the rain and wind. Its walls still echo with sounds. But it no longer belongs to him or his wife. It no longer belongs to the son who believed fists and anger could erase 30 years of sacrifice and hard work. It no longer belongs to the wife who smirked and clapped as she watched him do it to his own mother. It belongs to strangers now. Strangers who will treat it with respect and care because they paid for it with their own hard-earned labor, not with mine or my sweat. And that is exactly as it should be in this world. I gave my son everything a mother could possibly give. I gave him the tools to build his life, the lessons to live with respect, the home to raise a family in safely. I gave and gave until there was absolutely nothing left inside me to give anymore. And in return for all of that, he gave me 20 hits across the face in front of a woman who laughed at my pain. That was his gift to me that terrible afternoon. My gift back to him was silence, cold and unshakable silence that could not be broken. Silence that sold his apartment while he worked and joked with friends. Silence that emptied his closets and carried out his furniture. Silence that left him standing in ruins with nothing but shame. He will remember that day every single time he sees an empty wall anywhere. He will remember it every time a neighbor turns away from him on the street. He will remember it every time he feels the heavy weight of shame pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. And he will know deep in his heart it was not anger that ruined his life. It was not shouting or screaming. It was not fists hitting back. It was the hand of the same mother he mocked and hurt, signing away the very ground he stood on with a pen. I still wear my old sweater every day. Keeps me warm and comfortable. Warmer than the apartment he lost forever. Warmer than the pride he wasted on cruelty. Warmer than the laughter that once cut me so deep I could barely breathe. That sweater is not shame or embarrassment. It is survival and strength. It is proof that I lived through winters he could not survive a single day of in his entire life. It is proof that I bent under pressure but did not break into pieces. And now when I walk the streets of my neighborhood, that sweater feels lighter on my shoulders because I carry no shame with it anymore. My final thought to anyone listening is this. He hit me 20 times on his own floors that I paid for. I sold those floors while he worked and bragged. I watched the life he built on my back carried out in boxes by strangers, and I left him with nothing but silence and empty rooms. This is my true story from beginning to end. I did not raise my hand in violence. I did not scream or beg for mercy. I did not cry in front of him or his cruel wife. I simply took back what was always mine by law and by right. The apartment was my gift to him when he was younger. But gifts can be taken back when they are used as stages for cruelty and violence. The same mother who gave him everything was the same mother who took it all away with a signature. He thought my age made me weak and powerless. He thought my silence meant I had given up. He thought my stillness meant I had accepted defeat. But he was wrong about all of it. My age gave me wisdom he will never understand. My silence gave me time to plan carefully. My stillness gave me strength he mistook for weakness. And when the time came, I moved like winter, cold, quiet, and unstoppable. The law listened to my voice when my son would not. The papers carried my name when my son forgot it. The apartment returned to my control when my son thought it was lost to me forever. I am an old woman with a worn sweater and tired hands. But I am not powerless. I am not weak. I am not a joke to be laughed at and filmed. I am a mother who gave everything and asked for only respect in return. When that respect was denied, when my face was struck, when my dignity was thrown on the floor, I did not break. I simply took back what was mine. This is the end of my story, but it is also a lesson for anyone listening right now. Treat your parents with respect and kindness. Remember who gave you life. Remember who worked when they were tired. Remember who went without food so you could eat. Remember who signed papers so you could have shelter. Remember who carried you when you could not walk. Do not let pride turn into cruelty. Do not let power turn into violence. Do not mistake silence for weakness. Because the same hands that give can also take away when pushed too far. My son learned this lesson the hardest way possible. He learned it standing in an empty apartment with nothing left but echoes. He learned it watching strangers carry away his life in boxes. He learned it feeling the shame that follows him everywhere he goes now. And he will carry that lesson for the rest of his life. I did not do this out of hate or revenge. I did this out of justice and self-respect. I did this because no mother should ever be hit by her own child. I did this because no woman should ever be mocked and filmed while in pain. I did this because the law protects those who cannot protect themselves with fists. I used the only weapon I had, the truth written on paper, signed and sealed. The apartment is gone from his hands now. The furniture is gone. The pride is gone. The friends are gone. The respect is gone. All of it vanished in a single day because he forgot one simple truth. The woman he hit was the same woman who owned everything he thought was his. I walk the streets now with my head held high. I do not hide in shame. I do not cry in corners. I do not apologize for what I did. I stand tall knowing I answered cruelty with justice, violence with law, and laughter with silence. This is my story. This is my truth. This is what happens when you forget who gave you everything. I am not telling you this story to make you feel sorry for me. I am telling you this story so you understand the power of standing up for yourself, even when you are old, even when you are hurt, even when the world is laughing at you. You do not need fists to fight back. You do not need to scream to be heard. You only need the truth, the law, and the courage to use both when the time is right. My son thought he had broken me that afternoon. He thought 20 hits would silence me forever. He thought his wife's laughter would bury my dignity so deep it could never be found again. But he was wrong about everything. Every hit made my resolve stronger. Every laugh made my plan clearer. Every smirk made my decision final. I waited until the moment was right. I gathered my papers, signed my name, and took back everything he thought he owned. The apartment was never really his. It was always mine on paper. He just lived in it believing a lie. And when the truth came out, when the movers arrived, when the strangers walked through his doors, he finally understood what he had done. He had hit the wrong woman. He had mocked the wrong mother. He had forgotten the wrong person owned his entire world. Now he pays the price every single day. Not with money but with shame. Not with bruises but with loneliness. Not with pain in his body, but with regret in his heart. And that price will follow him for the rest of his days on this earth. I sleep peacefully now. My face has healed from the hits. My heart has healed from the shame. My soul has healed from the betrayal. I am free from that apartment, free from his anger, free from his wife's cruelty. I am free because I chose to stand up, not with violence, but with the law. I am free because I chose silence over screaming. I am free because I remembered who I was. I am a mother, a worker, a survivor, and a woman who will not be broken by anyone, not even her own son. If you are watching this right now and you have ever felt powerless, ever felt mocked, ever felt like the world was laughing at your pain, remember my story. Remember that silence can be louder than screams. Remember that patience can be stronger than fists. Remember that the law protects the weak when used correctly. Remember that you are not powerless just because you are old or tired or hurt. You have power in ways people do not see. You have strength they do not understand. You have weapons they forgot existed. Use them when the time is right. Use them when you have been pushed too far. Use them when justice is the only answer left. Do not wait for someone else to save you. Do not hope that cruelty will stop on its own. Do not believe that silence means acceptance. Stand up for yourself even if it takes time, even if it takes planning, even if it takes every ounce of courage you have left inside. I did it. And if an old woman like me can take back her dignity from a son who thought he was stronger, then anyone can do it. The apartment is gone now. The chapter is closed. The story is finished. But the lesson remains. And it will remain long after I am gone from this earth. Respect your parents. Treat them with kindness. Remember what they sacrificed for you. Because if you forget, if you raise your hand, if you laugh at their pain, you may one day find yourself standing in an empty room with nothing left but regret. That is my final word. That is my truth. That is the end of my story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to Granny's Voice. And remember, never underestimate the power of a mother who has been pushed too far. The world may see wrinkles and gray hair, but underneath is a strength built from years of surviving things you cannot imagine. My son saw an old woman he could push around. What he didn't see was a woman who had survived poverty, loss, and pain long before he was even born. What he didn't see was a woman who knew how to fight without ever raising a fist. What he didn't see was a woman who had learned that the best revenge is not violence, but justice served cold and quiet. I gave him life and I gave him shelter. When he tried to take my dignity, I took back my gift. It was simple, clean, and final. No courts needed to hear my cries. No police needed to see my bruises. The law was already on my side because I had been smart enough to keep my name on the papers. That is the power of planning ahead. That is the power of not giving everything away completely. That is the power of protecting yourself even when you think you are helping someone you love. I loved my son. I still do even now. But love does not mean allowing yourself to be destroyed. Love does not mean accepting cruelty. Love does not mean staying silent when your own child treats you worse than a stranger on the street. Real love sometimes means tough lessons, hard consequences, and painful truths. I taught him the biggest lesson of his life, and I did it without ever raising my voice. The apartment I gave him is now home to a young family who treats it with respect. They painted the walls bright colors. They planted flowers in the small garden outside. They smile when they see me walking by. They do not know the full story, but they know I helped them get a home they could afford. And that brings me peace. What was once a place of pain is now a place of joy for people who deserve it. That is how justice should work. It should not just punish the cruel, it should reward the kind. My son and his wife moved into a small rental far from the neighborhood. I hear they struggle to pay the rent every month. I hear his wife works 2 jobs now. I hear he walks with his head down, no longer proud, no longer loud. I hear the whispers have followed them even there. People talk. People remember. People share stories. And the story of the man who hit his own mother and lost everything because of it, that story travels far. I do not feel joy in their struggle. I do not celebrate their pain. But I do not feel guilt either. What happened to them was their own doing, their own choice, their own cruelty coming back to meet them. I simply held up a mirror, and they did not like what they saw reflected back. Some people have asked me if I would ever forgive him. Some have asked if I would ever help him again. My answer is always the same. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. Forgiveness does not mean pretending it never happened. Forgiveness does not mean opening yourself up to be hurt again. I have forgiven him in my heart so that I can move forward with peace. But I will never forget what he did. And I will never put myself in a position where he can do it again. That is not cruelty. That is wisdom. That is self-preservation. That is the difference between being kind and being foolish. I chose to be kind to myself for once, after a lifetime of being kind to everyone else. And that choice saved me from becoming a broken woman with no dignity left. I am still here. I am still standing. I am still walking these streets with my head high. And that, my friends, is the greatest victory of all. Not that I took his apartment, but that I kept my soul intact. Not that I made him suffer, but that I refused to suffer any more myself. That is the real story. That is the real lesson. That is what I want you to take away from everything I have shared with you today. You are worth more than the cruelty people show you. You are stronger than the pain they cause you. You are capable of standing up even when every bone in your body is tired. Do not let anyone make you believe you are powerless, especially not your own family. Family should be your safe place, but when it becomes your danger, you have every right to protect yourself. You have every right to say no. You have every right to take back what is yours. I did not ask for permission. I did not wait for approval. I did not hope someone else would save me. I saved myself using the tools I had, my name on paper, my knowledge of the law, and my determination to never be a victim again. That is power. That is strength. That is justice. And it is available to anyone brave enough to reach for it. My story is not unique. There are thousands of mothers, grandmothers, and women who suffer in silence every day. They are hit, mocked, ignored, and discarded by the very people they gave life to. They are told to be quiet, to forgive, to forget, to keep the peace. But peace bought with your dignity is not peace at all. It is surrender. And I refuse to surrender. I hope my story gives strength to even one person out there who feels trapped, who feels powerless, who feels like there is no way out. There is always a way out. May not be loud. May not be fast. May not be easy. But it is there waiting for you to find it. Look at your papers. Know your rights. Understand the law. Plan carefully. Move quietly. And when the time is right, take back your power. Do not be afraid of what people will say. Do not be afraid of being called cruel or heartless. The people calling you those names are often the ones who stood by and did nothing while you were being hurt. Their opinions do not matter. Your safety matters. Your dignity matters. Your peace matters. Everything else is just noise. I am an old woman now, but I am not a weak woman. I am not a broken woman. I am not a defeated woman. I am a woman who fought back in the smartest way possible and won. And if that makes me cold or harsh in some people's eyes, then so be it. I would rather be cold and free than warm and trapped. I would rather be harsh and respected than soft and mocked. I would rather stand alone with my dignity than sit in a crowd full of people who laugh at my pain. This is who I am now. This is who I became the day I signed those papers. This is who I will be until my last breath leaves my body. A woman who knows her worth. A woman who protects herself. A woman who does not need anyone's approval to do what is right for her own soul. My son taught me that lesson without meaning to. He showed me that even the people you love most can hurt you the deepest. He showed me that sacrifice is not always appreciated. He showed me that kindness can be mistaken for weakness. And he showed me that sometimes the only way to teach someone respect is to take away the things they took for granted. I do not regret what I did. Not for a single second. Not on the hardest days. Not when people whisper. Not when I see him from a distance looking lost and broken. I do not regret it because I know in my heart it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do. And I would do it again if I had to. That is the strength of a woman who has finally learned to put herself first. That is the power of a mother who has drawn a line in the sand and said, "No more, never again." That is the peace that comes from knowing you stood up for yourself when no one else would. I walk these streets now, and I hold my head high. Not because I am proud of hurting my son, but because I am proud of saving myself. I am proud of using my mind instead of my fists. I am proud of staying calm when everything inside me wanted to scream. I am proud of planning when others would have only reacted. I am proud of finishing what needed to be finished. That apartment is gone, but I am still here. His pride is broken, but mine is restored. His world fell apart, but mine came back together piece by piece. And that is justice. That is balance. That is the universe correcting itself when cruelty goes too far. Some people watching this might think I am heartless. Some might think I went too far. Some might think a mother should never do this to her child, no matter what. To those people I say, walk in my shoes for one day. Feel the sting of 20 hits across your face. Hear the laughter of someone who should protect you. Watch your own pain turned into entertainment for strangers online. Then tell me what you would have done differently. Tell me you would have just forgiven and moved on. Tell me you would have stayed silent and accepted it. I do not believe you would have. I believe you would have done exactly what I did, or something even stronger. Because when you are pushed to your breaking point, you either break or you push back. I chose to push back, and I did it in a way that could not be undone, could not be argued, and could not be ignored. That is my story. That is my truth. That is my justice. And I am at peace with all of it. To everyone who has watched until this very moment, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for listening to an old woman's story without judgment. Thank you for understanding that strength comes in many forms. Thank you for seeing that silence is not always weakness, and action is not always violence. I hope you learned something today. I hope you feel a little bit stronger. I hope you know that no matter how old you are, no matter how tired you feel, no matter how powerless the world tries to make you believe you are, you have power inside you. You have rights. You have worth. And you have every reason to stand up and protect yourself when those things are threatened. Do not wait for someone to save you. Do not hope things will get better on their own. Do not believe that staying quiet will keep the peace. Real peace comes from respect. And respect comes from boundaries. Set your boundaries. Protect them. And never apologize for refusing to be treated like you do not matter. You matter. Your pain matters. Your dignity matters. And your right to live without fear or shame matters more than anyone's comfort or pride. I am Granny, and this has been my voice. A voice that was silenced for too long. A voice that was laughed at and mocked. A voice that was told to stay quiet and accept cruelty. But I found my voice again, not through screaming but through action. And now my voice reaches thousands of people who needed to hear that they are not alone, that they are not powerless, and that justice is possible even when it seems impossible. If my story helped even one person today, then every moment of pain was worth it. If my words gave strength to even one mother, one grandmother, one woman who thought she had no options left, then I have done what I set out to do. Stand tall. Stand strong. And never let anyone make you believe you deserve to be treated with anything less than respect. This is the end of my story, but it does not have to be the end of yours. Your story can have a different ending. Your story can have justice. Your story can have peace. You just have to be brave enough to write it yourself. Do not let others hold the pen that writes your life. Take it back. Write your own ending. Make it one you can be proud of. And remember, the woman they underestimated, the woman they laughed at, the woman they thought was too old and too weak, that woman took back everything and walked away with her head held high. If I can do it, so can you. Believe in yourself. Trust the law. Protect your dignity. And never ever let anyone convince you that you have to accept cruelty just because it comes from family. Family is supposed to protect you, not destroy you. And when they fail at that most basic responsibility, you have every right to protect yourself instead. Thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Thank you for subscribing and sharing my story. Thank you for being here with me until the very last word. I am just one old woman with a story to tell, but together, we are thousands of voices saying the same thing. We will not be silent anymore. We will not accept cruelty anymore. We will not be powerless anymore. We are strong. We are worthy. We are enough. And we will stand up for ourselves no matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it is, no matter who tries to stop us. This is my truth. This is my justice. This is my peace. And I wish the same for every single person watching this right now. May you find your strength. May you know your worth. May you protect your dignity. And may you never forget that you have the power to change your story, no matter how late it seems, no matter how impossible it feels. The apartment is gone. The pain is healed. The lesson is learned. And I am free. Truly, completely, finally free. Thank you and goodbye.